Bitcoin and Ethereum have seen a big pump over the weekend, but I'm actually quite bearish on the both of them. So in today's video, I will be looking for shorts and I will be explaining every single plan to you guys. There is some interesting stuff that happened over the weekend for Bitcoin. We can see over here that Bitcoin was definitely putting in some interesting price action across the board. We can see that Bitcoin swept that local low over here on a Sunday, and after the sweeping that local low, it also got a push to the upside that gave us a bullish market structure break right over here for the price of Bitcoin. Now, this looks like a bullish reversal structure, but the problem with this bullish reversal structure is the timing of this bullish reversal structure over here. We know that any type of price action that takes place over the weekend or during bank holidays can never ever be trusted. So I'm thinking that this reversal structure over here is actually a trap to trap people into longs right over here to then engineer liquidity beneath the low right over here. So my target for the current week on Bitcoin is this low over here, this weekend low around $87,500. Now what I really like about this low is that it also aligns with this high probability demand area that we have put in on the 4-hourly time frame on the price of Bitcoin. So basically what we can state is that this low over here is basically acting as an inducement for this high probability demand area over here. So what I am basically looking for this week on Bitcoin is to get a move towards this inducement, in towards this demand, and then later throughout this week or maybe next week, bottom out before I push towards the upside. So intraday bearish, high time frame bullish. Now, in order to see a move towards this low over here, I'm looking for Bitcoin to put in the high for the week, either today or maybe it has already put in that high for the week yesterday. Now, the people that have been following me for a longer period of time, and I will leave a link about this with a more in-depth explanation in the description down below, but the people that have been following me for a longer period of time know that I'm always looking for the high or low for the week to be put in on the Monday or Tuesday. Now, why is that? That's the case due to the Bright Data statistical platform, because what we can see is that when I select the last 18 months of time data on the weekly candles for Bitcoin, I can see that when I navigate towards the Data Explorer part right over here, that 69.2% of weeks put in their first pivot on a Monday. 19.2% of weeks put in their first pivot on a Tuesday. So combined, 88.4% of weeks on Bitcoin put in their first pivot, aka the high or low for the week, on the Monday or on a Tuesday. So we now know that these 2 days are extremely pivotal. So the time period that I've marked out over here on the chart is Monday and Tuesday. And this is the time period where I'm looking for Bitcoin to put in the high for the current weekly candle. Now, that means that maybe the high has already been put in. So if I go towards the lower time frame, towards the 15-minute time frame, I want to start seeking for potential executions. As I said, I still think that there is the possibility that we are going to take out the current weekly high over here and that we are going to form the weekly high today on a Tuesday. Now, if that happens, I'm looking for bearish confirmations over here. What can those bearish confirmations look like? I'm basically looking for Bitcoin to take out the current weekly high, followed by a high probability market structure break towards the downside, basically deviating Monday's high over here, preferably in confluence with an S&T divergence over here as well. If I get these kind of confirmations, I'm executing shorts on Bitcoin towards the weekend low over here around $87,500. Now, there is definitely also the scenario that Bitcoin is not going to take out the current weekly high and that the high is already in for the week. In that case, I'm looking for internal liquidity to get swept and to get mitigated and to get manipulated before executing shorts. We can see that Bitcoin is currently actually mitigating some internal liquidity, but we can also see that over here, I have some more internal highs resting as well with some of that internal liquidity. So I'm basically looking for any of this buy side to get mitigated. If I see bearish confirmations on the 15-minute or maybe even the 5-minute time frame across the board over here, exactly like I just explained for the current weekly high as well. So high probability, bearish market structure break. In that case, I'm looking for intraday shorts on the price of Bitcoin with my invalidation above that high, targeting $87,000 and beyond. Now, the Ethereum chart is quite similar compared to the Bitcoin chart, but I actually think that the Ethereum chart is even more bearish intraday compared to the Bitcoin chart. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that when we look at the current Ethereum chart, we can see that Ethereum has been sweeping a lot of sell-side liquidity over here. So we had a lot of sell-side liquidity resting right there. Now, we swept that sell-side liquidity with a big wick over here. We now know that sweeping a big sell-side liquidity pool and then creating a big wick to the downside means that there is still a draw on liquidity resting right over here. Why? Because a big wick is indicating too fast of a price movement. And if price moves too fast into a liquidity pool like this, the big players don't have the time to fill all of their big buy and long orders. Now that is exactly what was going on over here. Due to the reason that price moved too fast into this sell-side liquidity pool, but also due to the timing of this wick right over here. So I actually do think that Ethereum has a massive draw on liquidity resting right over here with this big wick over here on the 4-hourly time frame. Now we know that those wicks, they get filled for at least 50%. That 50% wick fill level is at around $2,966. That is a massive draw on liquidity for the price of Ethereum. Now, just like for Bitcoin, the exact same thing goes for Ethereum. When I mark out Monday open right over here, and I mark out Tuesday close right over here, we know that Ethereum really likes to form its first pivot on a Monday or on a Tuesday. If I now navigate towards the brighter data platform and I select the weekly time data for Ethereum instead of Bitcoin, I can see that 66.7% of weeks form their first pivot on a Monday and 14.1% of weeks form their first pivot on a Tuesday. Actually, the last time that we did not form the first pivot on a Monday is 7 weeks ago. Then we formed it on a Wednesday, but the last 6 weeks in a row, Ethereum formed its first pivot on a Monday. Also quite interesting to note is that when we look at the weekly distance data for Ethereum, 92.9% of weeks have formed a bigger wick towards the downside. That means that the current weekly candle on Ethereum has an unusually small wick towards the downside, and meaning that the current weekly low is a weak pivot. That only adds extra confluence to our bearish idea for Ethereum. Now for Ethereum, I'm looking for something similar as for Bitcoin, because we can see that Ethereum has been building up a lot of internal buy-side liquidity right over here. I'm looking for some of that buy-side liquidity to get mitigated, to get manipulated, in order for the big players to fill some of their final sell and short orders and to trap people into late buy positions. If I get this bearish market structure break on the price of Ethereum over here, I will be looking for shorts over here with my invalidation above that local high that we form, targeting that weak pivot for the current weekly candle, but eventually targeting $2,966 for the price of Ethereum. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. If you guys did enjoy today's video, make sure to smash up the like button, subscribe to the channel. Guys, also don't forget to check out the first video in the description down below. Very educational one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Ciao, ciao!